everyone, welcome back to my channel, Diamonds and Washi. My name is Katie, and today I'm here with a review of the Night of the Frost Dragon Stitch Along by Flossy Fox Shop. I completed this as a diamond painting, as you can see, and it's actually the first stitch along I've ever completed. So in addition to reviewing this particular project, I'm also going to share some of my learnings and tips if you were to take on a stitch along project for yourself as a diamond painting. So spoiler alert, I really loved doing this project so much. I had a lot of fun. If you aren't familiar with the stitch along, it's typically a project that is released in multiple parts over a set period of time. This particular project, the first part released in September or October of 2024, and one part was sent out each month through part 8, which was released in April of 2025. So I completed these mostly as we went along. Sometimes I'd maybe miss a month and have to play catch up, but it was really fun because I didn't know what the completed image was going to look like. The artist had given out some theme descriptions and even some kind of like mood board image style things, so you had a sense for what the overall theme and style was going to be. Also, if you've looked at this artist's work before, that would give you a pretty good sense of style and elements and things that she tends to gravitate towards. And I had a feeling it was going to be very much up my alley. My gosh, was it? I did get the drills and the canvas from Gem Shop. One of the really nice things about this was that I was able to just send the listing for this project that had things like the stitch count and the colors and whatnot over to Gem Shop, and this shop did all the work for me in terms of doing the math to figure out exactly what size blank canvas I needed, as well as calculating the number of diamonds in each color that I was going to need, and having that off of my plate and not, having to worry about potentially miscalculating something was incredibly helpful. I know there's other shops out there that I think do this as well, but Gem Shop tends to be my go-to because it just tends to be very, very easy in that way. So I do have my paper logbook here, and this is where I track the projects that I actually work on and complete. And I write down things like, well, the stats. I need to go back in and add how many colors there were in this one. I started this one on October 16th. That was when part 1 came out, and I just finished it, well, today, the day I'm recording, which is April 26th. I like to rank things like my confetti and enjoyment as well as the overall drill count. So this had just over 31,000 diamonds in it. I ranked my enjoyment a 9 out of 10, and my confetti rating, in my opinion, was about 7 out of 10. So a little high on the confetti in some areas, but that really, with pixel art like this, gave, I think, the detail that it needed to. I think it really worked. I also write down things like what I loved, maybe what I didn't love, as well as any notes. So I wrote things like, yes, this was a cross-stitch conversion project. And there was one specific spot that the artist had offered alternate charting, and I decided to go with that particular charting. I'll talk more about that. But overall, if you couldn't tell from my enjoyment, 9 out of 10, I loved working on this project a lot. It was neat to have a longer term project where it was like, even if I wanted to, I couldn't finish it any faster. I had to wait for each of these parts to release. The first part 1 that released was like, I think up in this top corner, and some parts were bigger than others. My favorite of the parts that released has to be, there was this big section, I think it was part 4, that included, I believe this is the Druid, and then, of course, the actual frost dragon, which gave this piece its name. So this was my favorite part. Oh, and I did want to mention, because this is my first stitch along, I don't know how many of these things are something that artists do across the board. I have to imagine it varies just depending on the artist and how they like to do their respective stitch alongs. Something I loved about how Flossy Fox did theirs is when they sent out the email each month that was like, okay, here's part 2, here's part 3, so on and so forth. They would include not only all the files that you need to either track it as a paper chart or use it in the Pattern Keeper app, which is what I chose to do. But this artist, well, for one, she knew that a lot of us were doing these as diamond paintings, and if there were any diamond painting specific tips, she included these in this email. Like, for example, once you finish this part, make sure you don't go past this particular image any further or add in any background color, because you're going to immediately go into, there's going to be more charting there. And I'll explain what I mean exactly by that in just a moment. don't want to get too sidetracked, but in addition to these, basic notes that the artist would include, she would also include things like the lore for that particular part. So I went back and I pulled out the email from part 4, which is the part that included this character and the frost dragon. Just as an example, the lore for this section said the druid is a core member of the frost dragon guild. They bring a lot to the table with their ability to transform into and communicate with animals. This frost dragon has formed a particularly strong bond with the druid, drawn to their gentle spirit and willingness to fight for those who need defending. So having that story element where the artist was giving us more of like the story that they're creating with this artwork just made my fantasy loving heart so happy, and just added a depth to this artwork that you don't typically get in a diamond painting experience, I feel like, especially because it was an ongoing, like kind of active experience. It was like, I wonder what the next part's lore is going to be, what more of the story behind this piece is going to unfold. Maybe I'm just a huge nerd, but I loved that part of it. It was one of the things I looked forward to most about these emails that would go out each month. So yeah, I just had to mention that. And again, I don't know how other artists necessarily do their stitch-alongs and what those look like format-wise, but this is one of many things that made me go, for sure, if Flossy Fox does another stitch-along, I will sign up in a second, because it was so much fun. It was so much fun. So, there were a few different things I wanted to mention about the experience of working on this particular kit as a diamond painting. First, I did use the Pattern Keeper app like I started to mention earlier. I have just this fire tablet that I got for a really crazy sale on Prime Day or something like that, and I have the various parts of the Night of the Frost Dragon that I've uploaded into here as I've gone, along with some other charts. But I highly recommend using an app like Pattern Keeper or Markup RXP, because Pattern Keeper is not yet available on iOS. They've been saying for years that they're working on an iOS app, but it's been years, so I don't know if and when we're going to see that. But it just, let me pull up a chart. I'll kind of give you an example of why it's so handy. I want to zoom in so I'm not showing you too much, but just for example, you'll have this chart in front of you, and this is the sword this is part 8. This is the little innkeeper in their sword over here, but it lets you pick and highlight the colors, and it's like, okay, here's where all of this symbol is, and it just makes the process of tracking which drills you've placed, or stitches if you're doing this as a cross-stitch project, and counting and placing, it just makes it so much easier. I've done a few different cross-stitch conversion projects here on my channel and have a playlist actually dedicated to my cross-stitch conversion projects, which this video will be added to. If you'd like to see other projects that I've worked on and my learnings over the years with those, I will have that playlist linked below, of course. But definitely one of my biggest learnings is Pattern Keeper is a lifesaver. I think it just makes such a big difference, and saves a lot of time and headache, and I think helps, at least me, prevent a lot of mistakes. So that's something I would strongly recommend for sure. If you are going to do this as a diamond painting, there's a couple of important things I think it's good to note. First, especially if you're thinking of doing it a stitch along, before buying into it and committing, I would strongly suggest contacting the artist and specifically letting them know, hey, I'm thinking of actually doing this as a diamond painting on a blank canvas. Could you tell me if there are any specialty stitches, or backstitching or anything like that? Anything just sort of beyond basic stitching that wouldn't translate to diamond painting form. I'd imagine a lot of cross-stitch artists might be like, I don't even know what it means to turn this into a diamond painting. I'm not sure what you mean. That's why I'm trying to offer sort of that, what I'm asking for is this. Now, Flossy Fox, knew what diamond painting was. She has a lot of her artwork signed with Jaded Gem Shop as pre-charted diamond painting projects. But when I reached out to her to ask, she immediately was able to tell me oh no, there's not going to be any backstitching or specialty stitches. She tries to keep these pretty basic and pretty accessible. So So that's something I would definitely recommend doing. There was a stitch along that was really popular when I first started diamond painting back in 2020 that was like Dark Queen of the Seas stitch along, and that one had like beading and tons of different like specialty stitches that wouldn't translate to diamond painting form, because backstitching is like, imagine you're taking a Sharpie and like drawing it over the tops of the drills to add like details and lines and whatnot. It just doesn't totally work. The other thing you need to keep in mind when you're doing a project like this as a diamond painting is that it, depending on how the artist has designed it, it might not necessarily be, I think the phrase is full coverage, not a cross stitcher. I've done a couple of little projects here and there, but I don't know all the lingo. So if I'm misspeaking, I absolutely apologize. But I think a full coverage means that like, if this were done as a cross stitch chart, there would be stitches with a background color. As this was charted, there were no stitches indicated for the background color, which you can actually see in Pattern Keeper. Let me pull that back up real quick. And like, there's just these blank squares. That's the background color. If you're doing this as a cross stitch project, that's just going to be your fabric. You're probably picking a fabric color based on the artist's recommendations of things that would fit the color palette for the piece. And you are not putting any stitches on those, and just the fabric is showing around it. It's fine. In diamond painting form, if I didn't put any drills down on those background color squares, you would just see glue and the lines of the grid. So it doesn't really work. I ended up going off of the color suggestions that she had made for people for fabric, and ended up choosing this dark gray as my background color. And Jade was able to do the math and figure out about how many of the background color I would need to be able to fill that in as I went. So do keep in mind that depending on what the exact chart is, that might or might not be full coverage. You might have to be taking into account like, oh, I'm going to need to add in, figure out how to add in like a background color myself. So just something that you might not necessarily think of. But yeah, there were some suggestions, like I said, that she had made based on color palette and whatnot. Also, if you've never done a cross stitch conversion project before, if this is brand new to you, I don't know necessarily that this is the kind of project that would be the most beginner friendly. I think Jada Gem Shop still has some really beginner friendly cross stitch conversion projects that are really small. I know that Diamond Art Studio UK has some really, really cool diamond painting projects that are designed to be like cross stitch conversion projects where you can kind of learn more easily as you go as well. So there are some options out there, and I feel like those options are continuing to grow. And a stitch along, I mean, you could start with this, but I would just I don't know, take it slowly and make sure you're, I guess, really counting carefully and whatnot. So it's definitely something that it engages a different part of your brain than a standard diamond painting does, but I really enjoy it a lot. It opens up a lot of doors in terms of artwork options out there. And because cross stitch has been around so much longer than diamond painting, there's so many licensed cross stitch pieces out there to choose from, and a lot of them can be turned into diamond paintings. Like, there's not specialty stitches, and you can absolutely, enjoy them as in diamond painting form. Other thoughts about this in particular, there were some areas that were a little bit more confetti heavy, like, oh my gosh, this roof. this took a little bit, because it was a little bit more confetti heavy, but the pattern of it looks really, really dang cool. I think the pixel art translates really well too, and even though like a lot of these, we just have these really pixelated dragons, it just works in my opinion. The snowflakes were, that was pretty confetti heavy, and they were kind of distributed in such a way that I was finding myself really having to count very, very carefully to make sure that I wasn't miscounting and messing up. Now, one of the nice things about Jada Gem Shop's grids, which she, I think, was the first one that like went to her supplier and was like, hey, is this a thing that you can do with your grids? There's actually a 10 by 10 grid that makes it a little bit easier to kind of match up with the grid in something like Pattern Keeper on a paper chart and help with your counting and whatnot. So that is a nice option with Jada Gem Shop's canvases. I know some other places with blank canvases do that now as well too. I did like the drill quality on these. I did mean to mention that. I used this drill storage here, and I'll explain why there's release paper in here too. So I did have plenty left over of this particular background color. She sent me lots of extra, and I had plenty left over in all my other colors too, even though I ran a little low on a couple, because when I went with the alternate charting for this cat, I think that used up more of some of the colors than were probably on the stitch count, like the breakdown of colors when I originally ordered it. But the drill quality was really good. There was a light blue color or two, I think it might have been this one, or maybe it was 955, that were kind of trash prone. I had to pick around a lot, but yeah, I don't have a ton left of this one. You can see some of the trash in there, little tabs sticking off the side. But since I had enough to complete it, it was fine. I do find that with Jada Gem Shop kits that I usually end up having a couple of colors that just are a little more trash prone than the others. But for the most part, these were perfectly easy to work with and multi-place with, and I didn't find myself having to pick around a bunch of trash, which was nice. So no complaints about the drill quality or the canvas quality. One thing that was tricky about doing this, just from like a logistical standpoint, working on this as a diamond painting. Oh, so let me just check my notes, make sure I'm not forgetting any other things I wanted to mention. Yeah, okay, so working on this and kind of working around the plastic cover and just trying to only get to the areas and put drills down on the areas that were charted sometimes got a little tricky. Normally, if I'm doing a just standard diamond painting, I will, flip the canvas and work on it sideways or upside down, and it's not a big deal because the symbols are printed on the canvas. It's easy enough to just sort of rotate them and read them, sideways or upside down. But with the cross-stitch conversion project, where I feel like it's just trickier, you're doing a lot more careful counting and reading a chart and whatnot. I didn't want to be flipping this, upside down, sideways. I really wanted to work on it just straight up and down. So what ended up happening was that, like, for example, part one was up in this corner, and there were certain areas that was like, okay, I'm getting to the edge of, like this snowflake or something, and I'm going to stop there. I don't want to put any more, background color drills down past that or anything. But it's like, okay, I'm peeling back the plastic cover, and I just have all this exposed glue here, but I didn't know exactly where I otherwise would have cut the plastic cover. So I had this stack of release paper. This is from a shop that no longer is open. This was from Bev B Diamond Paints when she had a shop. You can get release paper from places like Crafts with Crashly. I think Bee's Crafty Corner has some. I know there's others out there. I'm not intentionally forgetting any, but these were some really big sheets that I just happened to have handy. So what happened was I peeled back the plastic cover and just like laid these down like this to get up to where I needed to work, just to make sure that I was not putting my hand or arm in any glue. So that was just a little bit trickier to work around. And then it was like I would finish a part, and again, it would be like the part might end just like on the dragon's tail or on, the edge of this snowflake. And it was like, again, I didn't want to create straight lines, like added enough background drills to create straight lines to cut. I hope this is making sense, because I didn't know always like how closely the next part's artwork was going to be to theirs. So I was taking an X-Acto knife, and if I was going along like the edge of this tree, like if that was the end of the chart that had been provided, I was like going with an X-Acto knife, like cut one drill space, cut two drill spaces, down, over. I just felt like it was messy. It was clunky. But that's like not on the fault of the artist or anything. It's just I think a reality of doing this as a diamond painting, honestly. Like a cross-stitch, someone that's doing this as a cross-stitch project isn't going to run into that problem because it's just fabric, So that was something I did sort of think, how would I try to do this differently? I guess just get a sharper X-Acto knife so that it's easier to cut through the plastic around where those exact drills go. But I think, okay, I have to refresh my memory one more time. My memory is terrible. Overall, yeah, I think that's really all I wanted to cover. I just had a truly lovely experience working on this from start to finish. Oh, I did forget to mention something else cool that this shop did. Again, I don't know how common this is with stitch along projects, but there was this really cool thing that they did prior to the actual stitch along releasing. They had like a little mini, not a materials pack, but it was like a pre-order of some goodies that included this washi tape, I think there were 2 rolls of washi tape that were kind of on theme, but this washi tape, which has, you know, a lot of similar elements to the artwork itself, and it was designed to go with this stitch along. So washi tape, there was a coordinating cover minder that I should have brought over and grabbed. There was, I think, like a pretty art print and some stickers, and it just made this feel like a really fun and special experience. And I think those things were exclusive to like the pre-order of the stitch along itself. So it was a really, really fun experience. Like I said, it was like, oh, I get all these fun, like coordinating things. It's like a little preview of what this project's going to be like. And then I'm getting these fun little bits of lore every time the artist sends out the next part. It was like a journey, but a fun journey, and completely sold me on the idea of doing these stitch alongs as a participant, and especially this artist's stitch alongs. Absolutely. Like as soon as she does another one, which I know she's done a few, I will sign up. I will be there. I'm going to be, you know, along for the ride. Now, if you're interested in doing this project, if you're, you know, this is the first time you're seeing it and you're going, shoot, I really love that artwork, I would love to work on it. It is available to purchase in her Etsy shop. I believe that the way it works now is just that if you go in and purchase it, you're just purchasing the whole chart. It's not like, oh, now you're going to get an email each month. It's like, no, once it's released, it's the whole thing. I think it works similarly if you were to join in partway through. Like if you decided to purchase the stitch along, you know, back in January, you would automatically get access to the 4 parts that had released up to that point. And then from then on, you know, each month get each, you know, subsequent part as it released. So when you purchase the stitch along on her Etsy shop, it's like you're buying the whole stitch along. You're not having to go in and buy each part individually. It's just, this is the flat fee for the stitch along, and wherever we are in the process, like you're getting access to the whole thing at some point. So I hope that makes sense. I again still feel like this is something very much a newbie at. And so if I have misspoken and anyone that is a seasoned stitcher who's done lots of stitch alongs would like to just let me know any corrections you have in the comments, please, please, please do so. I will not be offended. I want to make sure that I'm giving as accurate of information as possible. But I think that about wraps it up. Please take a look in the description box of this video for a ton of helpful links, including Jaded Gem Shop for materials, Flossy Fox's Etsy shop, of course, along with there was a Facebook group for this stitch along, and I think that maybe she does them for various stitch alongs. I'll link to the artist's Instagram and my cross-stitch conversion playlist if you want to see other cross-stitch conversion projects that I have done over the years. Hopefully lots of helpful things down there. But let me know, though, if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll do my best to be helpful and answer. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you want to see more diamond painting videos. I try to do projects that I love, which include things like unique projects like turning cross-stitch charts into diamond paintings, tackling really big projects sometimes, and unboxing kits from a variety of different shops and reviewing them. And I do weekly whip and chats. If you just want some company on Monday mornings, that's when my whip and chats go up. But I'd love to have you here, so please do subscribe if you would like to see more, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. I hope that you are doing well and taking care. Have a day and a week that's as amazing as you are. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.